Hey, fifth grade. Today for poetry, we're going to continue in the grouping of poems with the theme of metaphor. If you think back to the reference page that I attached to your poem, I think yesterday or perhaps even the day before, the reference page that talks about two things at once, and it talks about the different types of metaphors that we would be looking at, metaphors, similes, and personification. Each one of those is a different type of metaphor, but they are all metaphors. And so we'll be continuing in that theme. Today, we're going to focus on personification. And if you think back to that reference page, that is when we take something that is inanimate or doesn't move about on its own, and we give it the qualities of a person. So it could be movement, or it could also be emotions, or like facial features, things like that. Qualities of a person. That's what personification is. If you look at the word personification, you'll see the word person in it. So hopefully that will help you remember what this is. And back to the inanimate object, it isn't necessarily something that isn't living. Inanimate means not moving. Okay. So, like, for example, a plant, while if the wind blows, it might move, or as it grows, it might move upward. It doesn't move about throughout the world on its own. And so, other than through growth. And so that would be considered inanimate. A statue would be considered inanimate. A table would be considered inanimate. I think you guys get the idea. So, without further explanation, let's go ahead and get started. Personification is the easiest way I know for a poet to enter the world of metaphor. Personification treats an inanimate something as if it's alive and has human qualities, emotions, or behaviors. Take a look at two versions of Allison's poem about Clover, Something She Loves. In the earlier draft, with the working title Flowerless, she begins to experiment with personification in her choice of verbs. Here, like a person, the clover waits. It lies dormant beneath ice. It reaches to the sun. Let's read it together. Flowerless. Clover, mint green, and fresh as cool water. No fruit or floral adornment to place in a season. It is always there, an old standby substitute, patiently waiting for its day to rise, lying dormant beneath the ice or listlessly flat on the ground. An unappreciated gem, its three fronds gently reach out to the sunlight. The light illuminates a small flower, mint green and fresh as cool water. As she revised, Allison pushed harder into the territory of personification and used it to strengthen and sharpen her vision. So this was a beginning draft. This is a finished draft. I think you'll see what I mean. There's much more pronounced personification. Like you kind of got a hint of it here. There's no hint. It is absolutely here in Trinity. So follow along with me as I read. Clover wears Trinity. So she changed the title. Trinity means three, and she's talking about a three-leaf clover. Trinity. Clover wears mint green, as fresh as cool water. No fruit or floral adornment places her in a season. She lies dormant beneath ice, or listless among brown blades, or expectant amidst bees, but she is always there, the old standby, patiently waiting, to be appreciated never. Our unnoticed gem spreads her three fronds, mint green, as fresh as cool water, and catches the sun. Do you notice how Clover now has a gender in her poem? It's a she. How each verb suggests that Clover acts like a person and invites us to notice her? Three boys in Allison's class tried their hands at personification as well. We're going to read their poems and think about what we learn about their attitudes toward their subjects. So I'm going to scroll down here. And before we get started reading these 3 poems, I want to talk to you about the subject or what the poem is about. Skylight Man. A skylight is like a window in the roof, okay? So it lets outside light in. It's essentially a window in the roof, okay? So that's what that poem's about. And then Adirondack chair. This is an outside chair that will often sit on a balcony or in an outdoor area, sitting area. But it's a really heavy and rugged type chair. It kind of reminds me of a picket fence, the way that it's constructed, because you have these planks that kind of come together and you have a slat of wood that holds them all in place on the back. But it kind of has this really large back and really large arms. But other than that, it sets pretty low to the ground. It's almost like your bottom, when you're sitting in it, is almost on the ground, and then the front legs are very short. So hopefully that at least gives you some kind of idea of what an Adirondack chair is. And they're usually made out of heavy wood, okay? And then hypodermic is referencing a hypodermic needle. When you go to the doctor and you get shots or you get vaccinations when you're little, they give those to you using a hypodermic needle. So they will insert some medicine in the syringe by pulling the plunger. And then when they give you the shot, it usually goes into your arm and they get it into a vein or a muscle. And then they shoot that medicine into your vein or muscle to get that medicine in your body and protect you from whatever it is they're immunizing you for. And so hypodermic, that poem is about a hypodermic needle or a shot. Okay? Follow along with me. Skylight Man. Forever watching, forever staring, forever he surveys the world through his sun-tinted monocle. Silent, streaked with rain, unmoved by wind, he stands guard. I see my face in him as I wake and as I drift to sleep. I feel his solitude seep down into a cold gray puddle around my feet. Nor does he blink. I do those things for him when the light is just right. And then Adirondack chair. The 4-legged beast squats, stationary, its back arched toward heaven, invites me. I stalk it, then drop into its rough, comforting embrace, and let myself be taken. Hypodermic. A devil lies in wait for its next sacrifice. It spies one, fills with poison, and sends its puffy white assistant to prepare the unwilling victim. Then, this being of pure evil roars up and sinks its single fang into the distressed prey, pumps its poison into the bloodstream until it has tortured sufficiently. It retreats, fang glistening with your blood. Okay, please go back in to one of these poems and analyze on your own. And I'll tell you what I want you to analyze for and what I'm going to ask you to comment on in just a minute. But I want to point out a few things in each poem before I ask you to do that. So first thing that I want to draw your attention to is this word monocle. I don't think many of you probably know what that is. This is a single eyeglass that's kept in position by the muscles around the eye. So like if you've ever seen Planters peanuts, like Mr. Peanut that shows up on those jars of peanuts, he usually has a monocle. And it's just one little lens of glass. and it doesn't have a rim or anything. You just stick it up there, and it's held in place by your cheek muscle and your brow. Okay? And then I also want to point out this Skylight man, this is a window, right? And if you've ever looked outside a window when it's a little bit darker outside than it is inside, or vice versa, you can see your reflection in the window as well as see through it. So keep that in mind when you're analyzing this poem, because it's a window on the ceiling. If he's lying below the skylight, like if his bed is positioned under the skylight, at certain times he would be able to see through the window and see the night sky, but he would also be able to see himself being reflected in the glass. So keep that in mind. Also, if we look at Adirondack chair, I don't think there's really anything that I need to point out to you. It's pretty short and sweet and to the point. Jacob's writing about this chair. Like I told you, it's got a really large back and large arms. When he says, I sink, I stalk it and then drop into its rough, comforting embrace. It's like when he sits in it, he feels like he's being kind of hugged by the chair. And so just keep that in mind, that the chair is rather large. And so when he sinks into it, then he feels like he's being hugged. And then let's see if there's anything in hypodermic. I don't think so. I mean, this is clearly the needle being, filled with the medicine. And then it has a puffy white assistant. I don't know if you guys realize this, but before you get those shots, I probably have never seen this because I always look away when I'm getting a shot or if I'm giving blood, but they will take a disinfecting wipe or a cotton swab and they'll clean the area that they're going to insert the syringe. They'll sterilize it to make sure that you're not going to get an infection at the injection site. So they'll do that. And so that's what the puffy white assistant is doing, and he's preparing the unwilling victim. He's preparing the site. And unwilling victim is you. Like, I don't know a single kid on the planet that's been like, oh yeah, I get to get shots today. So in my opinion, anybody that gets shots is probably an unwilling victim, even though we do it because we know it's important. And then here, of course, it's sinking into the muscle, and it's when the plunger goes down, then that medicine is then going into the bloodstream. Okay, so here's what I want you to go back in and analyze for. Remember, you're just going into one of these poems, Skylight Man, Hypodermic, or Adirondack. You are not going into Flowerless or Trinity, because I was just using those to show you examples of how it changed and how much more personification was in the finished draft. I want you to go back in and give me one comment, or if you need to do it in more than one, that's fine too. But give me one comment that tells me what we learn about the poet's attitude towards their subject. So if you go into Skylight Man, your comment needs to tell me what you think Niall feels about his skylight. Okay? If you go back into a Adirondack chair, I want you to tell me what attitude you think Jacob has towards the Adirondack chair. If you go back into Ben's poem, I want you to tell me how he feels about getting shot or a hypodermic needle. Okay? One comment, one poem. Tell me what the poet's attitude towards its subject is. And the way that you're going to know that is because of the images and the attitude the personification and the details in the poem portray. So, all right, guys. And then as a writer in general, we know that figurative language makes us better and is good for our readers. So, something you might try as a writer is to make a list of objects or phenomena like wind or tides and ideas and feelings, or like anger and hunger, that you have an attitude about or that you'd like to consider and figure out your attitude toward. These are potential topics for your personifications. All right, guys, I love and miss you. I can't wait to see your faces soon. Let me know if you have any questions or need anything at all. Bye, guys.